Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. We are joining you today, day after our game against Burnley. I am joined by my co-hosts, as always. Oscar, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I've recovered from yesterday, so not too bad.
Good. You're not as mad as me about it still. Greg, mate, how are you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we truly found the circle come complete, right? Ready to start the cycle again.
It just makes me think of, the South Park meme. That bit of optimism built from the Ipswich win, and it's gone.
And it's gone. Yeah, and it's gone. It's like, where is it though? It's gone. You can never get it back. That's gone forever. So enough pre-ramble. So obviously we played Burnley at home yesterday to a bumper crowd of about 15,000, which is really starting to show that their pricing structure is resulting in people voting with their wallets. However, I still think
worry about it in the next round. It's not a decision to make.
Now they don't get the revenue at all because we're out. So it is what it is. But positives, we get to focus on the league, right? Right, yeah. Let's actually start and let's have a chat about the game. And obviously, you can tell from us, we're all frustrated, upset, disappointed, all those standard things. We've got some talking points from before and after. So let's start with the lineups. So we were told in the press conference that it would be a barely changed lineup because obviously they don't have we don't have an extra game. This is just replacing the normal Premier League fixture. And then we had quite a bit of a strange lineup with a centre back with two left backs and two right backs, and our, shall we say, deputy goalkeeper. And where I'm at is I would prefer, I don't know, anyone else at this point, especially after a hairy moment where you probably know the moment I'm thinking about, where McCarthy kicked it directly to a Burnley player, and it was only by the fact that they're slightly worse than us sometimes that they did not score. So, lineups, gentlemen. Oscar, I'll go to you first. What did you think? It wasn't hugely different, but also different enough that it felt weird.
I just why? I mean, it's not as if we have to prepare McCarthy for next season. He's not going to be playing next season. It's not as if we have to keep him happy. If he ends up going, then he ends up going. It's really not the end of the world. I just don't, unless Ramsdale's picked up a knock again, or they thought
he was struggling last week at the end of the game with his hip. Right, it looked like he actually injured it in his knee slide. Ironically, so maybe it's just that, and he's not quite fully fit from that. Yeah.
Did Alcaraz?
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, did he have a couple of games out after he stopped knee sliding?
Yeah.
like it's bad enough the injuries they pick up during the season. The fact they're now injuring during celebration. By the way, that doesn't mean I want to get rid of inflammatory celebrations, which, by the way, is the most ridiculous thing I've heard of in recent times.
As long as the bit that's inflammatory isn't the muscles, right? You don't want.
Yes, just stop. The fact that annoyed me. We'll get to that maybe at another point. But it was a bit of a weird one. Like, I don't really understand why McCarthy was started unless it was an injury thing. I don't know, considering who Juric is as a person so far, I don't know why he wouldn't have just said that, because it's not like he's going to keep Burnley guessing. Like, it just seemed like a weird, unless it's a last minute thing. Ramsdale was like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it, which could well be. Who knows?
And I know I sometimes do defend McCarthy, but would Ramsdale have made a difference in terms of the goal? I don't know if he, I don't know that McCarthy could have done any more, but I think that Ramsdale might have been able to do something.
It's weird because I also think that if Ramsdale was in, maybe he could have commanded the defence slightly better than McCarthy, because it's just, I don't know, like the whole goal from start to finish was just a bit wet, right? It shouldn't have gone in. It's another classic, like, we just let in the softest goal of the season, except it's not. We now have a montage of them, again, trying to get extra footage for that montage. It was just frustrating. But at the same time, it didn't help Juric's case if we have centre backs, why he seemed to start 2 left backs and 2 right backs and kind of leave Jan on
Also,
his
the
own in the
way
middle.
round he played them was a bit baffling, right? Because Wellington seemed to slot in as left centre back, and he played Manning as wing back. Whereas I think I would have probably done that the other way round.
Well, yeah, especially where, like, in my opinion, Wellington was one of the ones actually getting balls into the box, so it made sense to put him. He seems to have more of an attacking sort of. It was just a bit weird. It seemed to be like, we're going to try and play the strongest team. We're going to try and build off of the win last week. So what I'm actually going to do is experiment in this cup, and it was saying one thing and doing another again. And I thought we'd kind of moved past that with not having Martin as a manager anymore, and maybe, and some of the post game sort of conversation around not, what's the words I'm looking for? The post game conversation about how we played really well, and I'm like, well, if we played really well, we would have won. Like, I can't deal with the dissonance there.
But also, even more baffling up front as well. Like, we did a really good job of beating players and putting the ball in the box, and then there was just no one there at any point ever because we didn't have a striker on the pitch.
That's where I can understand, like, if you put Manning out at left wing back / left wing, because he has got quite good delivery when he actually gets the ball in with his left foot. So aim for Onuachu, then it makes sense. Not even on someone, not Fernandez.
Yeah,
it's just so bizarre. And then the fact that we started again without a striker, is it because it worked last time in the cup? But you've got Nathan Wood on the bench, which I don't know. Obviously, we'll get to the post-game discussion towards the end of the show, right? And there's a few things I want to talk about because I'm pretty salty about it all. Because, like, again, this is another Saturday where I've given up so much of my time to just be upset by the football club I love. I know we all feel that, but it's just like starting to get on me, and I'm like, I shouldn't have to want to count down the league games that are left, right? That isn't how you should feel about it. But
I actually thought that yesterday was the most frustrated that I've been all season. That last 5 minutes, I know we'll come to that later, but just so frustrating.
Yeah,
and
the hangover of Martin Ball. I feel you. That last 5 minutes of just watching them, where you're sat there and, like, you could hear it in the crowd. The crowd was shouting, "What are you doing?" Like, you're passing it back between yourselves 4 to 5 times. That isn't where the goal is. The goal is the other end. Like, yeah, it's lovely. Oh, everyone taking 5 minutes to pop and have a look at Rafe and Redmond because he's gone on the pitch. Wonderful. Don't care. Score a goal. Like, try and do something. Like, this was such a good opportunity to build on the win. But not only that, just build something with a little bit of positivity. And it was just squandered. But, yeah, lineup was...
my opinion, the lineup was weird. He's trying to create a new formation with one defender. That's what he seems to have been doing for the last month. It's just, let's leave Ben Narek there. I understand it's man-to-man and there's other centre-backs are coming out and attacking the ball. But it just, like, literally yesterday was one centre-back and then 4 fullbacks. Maybe it's a new, or the return of the sweeper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it, if it worked, we could be calling him a footballing genius for this ridiculous notion of forget defenders, let's just attack. But it didn't. We didn't score.
How many shots did we have in the second half? I'm not sure there was much attacking going on.
None.
Yeah.
It was definitely
so it seems
not
like
high.
It's forget defending and forget attacking.
Yeah. What is football?
Yeah,
you hold the ball, and this is the problem that we're going to have, and this is the hangover of having a ridiculous possession-based style philosophy in the team. Is that if they're going to just do, like, you saw the heritage, quote unquote, of Russell Martin yesterday with the holding the ball for absolutely ages, passing it around to one another. But, like, again, some of this is to do with, like, this decision making when it comes to who was picked and who wasn't. But it's just, we'll get into more of the actual game after a word from our partners at Zencastr.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr.
So we are back. Obviously, we've discussed the lineups. We've discussed our thoughts on how weird it was. We've discussed some thoughts on the actual game a little bit. So actually getting into the meat and bones of the game, obviously they had quite a few efforts that we managed to somehow defend quite early on. We had Sulemana at some point booked for simulation, which I kind of feel like he just fell over. I don't think he really made too much of a meal of it, but at the same time, there were just a couple of events like that. We had a goal line clearance. We had McCarthy's ball out to directly to Burnley because apparently he can't pass it out or kick it out anymore. We had lots of moments that were just kind of devastating and frustrating. So I guess to spin it around in Greg's remit, gents, are any positives to take from that game? And if the answer's none, that's fine. Just thought I'd ask the question. So, Oscar, anything from that game that you could go, I thought this was okay?
Not that I can recall myself. I listened to the first half because I was driving back from where I was coming from, and watched the second half. And yeah, I can't say there was a huge amount. To say second half, nothing. We didn't create anything, so not masses to take from me. And I always do try and look for something to take out of it.
Oh, it's unfortunately true. Your opinion's pretty much the same, Greg, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we only conceded one, so that's something.
You're right. Maybe one centre back is how many goals. We'll have one goal scored per centre back. So if we only have one centre back, they can only score one goal. I'll say I think Wellington looks like he has the potential to be a good player. He's someone I'm surprised by as a signing that was kind of a pre-contract agreement that we didn't really think much about. We didn't really think was going to come good. I think that he's managed to slot into the first team quite quickly and
He one off the
be
line
quite
as well,
good.
didn't he?
Yeah, so like where I'm at is that it's like the small glimmers of good things, right? And I don't see him disappearing next season. So maybe we'll actually have like sort of a left wing, which won't be too bad in Manning and him.
To be fair, I thought Grombach looked fairly a little bit more lively in that he tried to go forwards when he got the ball.
He did
when he came on, so that was a slight positive. He hasn't been tainted yet.
It's interesting, isn't it, that two of the new signings that have played football to score goals are the ones that are trying to get the ball forward to score the goals. You can see, obviously, even some of the frustration with even amongst the players themselves. You're going to wonder where these fractures start to kind of appear. But it was just a bit weird, and like I don't think the substitutions did him any favors either, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. To bringing on, when you bring on a one guy, you obviously brought off Dibbling and put on Paul in 67th minute. I was like, okay, we've finally got a striker on the field, but I don't feel Paul did a huge amount. Yeah, didn't really have as much of the service. The second half was just dire. There's no other word around it. But like when you're bringing on, you're swapping out sort of a defensive midfielder for a defensive midfielder took off Big Les, swapped them out for Smallbone. It's kind of like, okay, it's kind of a like for like. It wasn't really, nothing really happened after that. And then you're swapping out two of your attacking players with Archer and Grombach getting on the field, but so late in the day that it's, poor Cameron Archer getting 4 minutes to try and turn around and what has been. I just feel for some of them. I feel for Juric because he must be looking at the absolute mess of this situation and not having no idea what to do with it. I feel for our new technical director that's come in and has probably gone to that game and gone, what? this is what I've got to deal with. And I feel for anyone that thought that having these sort of philosophies in football was such a good idea, because it's the clear hangovers, right? And I know we keep banging on about it, but it's because it's so prevalent. Greg did his good rant about it, but I still remember harking back to our Wolves crossover. So you weren't around at this time, Oscar, but when we did the crossover with Wolves, they said that they still had a lot of the players in Wolves was, under Gary O'Neill, were still playing basically the way that Nuno played from so long ago, because they just didn't know how to play any other way. And it seems like we've kind of got some of that in our players still. It's just, they can't. They've been trained to do something for such a way. We've learned to try and play a game such a specific way for so long. It's almost like you want to take them all off to like a training camp for 4 weeks. Just go back to basics. Like genuinely, it feels like that. And play people in the correct positions and pick a formation. Like just
it's almost like it's ingrained in them now. They've done it day in, day out when Martin was there, and when panic stations set in, then they revert to it. That's their natural right. This is what we're going to do. We're going to keep the ball. We're going to knock it around. But Burnley were always going to sit in a low block and say, right, come at us, like they used to do, like teams used to do to us when we were in the Premier League last time, and we had no answers to that. That was more under Hasenhüttl when we're trying to play against the ball, and they're like, okay, well, you can have the ball because we know you're not going to damage us with it, and that's basically all Burnley did. We're going to let you sit there. And then we just sort of passed the ball looking at them, trying to get them to come out. And they were like, no, we're quite happy, sat in our little block. You come and beat us. Which is why, again, then you bring on Onuachu to try and disrupt that a little bit. But then we don't play it to him. Like, even if he's not the best in the air, he's still, pushing 7 foot tall. Just hit him. See what happens. Cause some chaos.
Yeah.
Knock it round the back. And slowly, because if you knock it slowly around the back, they're just going to shuffle round, and that's all they did. If you're going to do it, you've got to do it quick. But they didn't do that. And then, it would be, right, we'll knock it round, we'll go out the side, we'll lose it, they'll counter and they'll score, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, I couldn't really put it better than myself, to be honest. It's just, it's upsetting that, like, I will consider myself to be a massive amateur. I know that you do some actual coaching, so you have more of a football mind, but it's like sometimes it feels like it's the basics, right? That's what the struggle is. Like if the layman and the not so layman, can see this, what is it? Why can't they? And this is the most frustrating thing about this season so far. And it makes you. It's the whole live by the sword, die by the sword philosophy for Russell Martin. It's like, well, yeah, but you've not just died by the sword. You've brought down everything else with you. It's not just you that's died by the sword. It now kind of feels like the whole club has had to kind of suffer with it as well.
Yeah,
and if it
the sword was a hand grenade, and that's...
There you go. Like, if it was going to work, it was going to work, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And it's not.
On the side of it, I admire trying to do something different. And I do think, would you rather be a team that sort of stays up by the skin of their teeth every season, playing horrible football, a bit like Everton have been for the last however long, playing horrible football, just surviving on the last day, or, trying to do something a bit different? Okay, granted, it really hasn't worked this year. And what my argument would be is when things aren't working, you do have to try and find a different way of doing it. And I think Martin did try and do that, but I think the damage, unfortunately, was done by that point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, again, I think it was just trying to find a middle ground, right? And you see that in games like the Tottenham game, where like he tried to do something different. We were 4-0 down in 25 minutes, and then he reverted back to panic stations where we only shipped one more goal, and then unfortunately, that was it for him. It was the end of his career, and now you've got Juric trying to do something. And it'll be very, very interesting because if this new guy is in charge of the footballing side of things, there are already people talking about replacing the manager, which is once again wild, but then also who knows at this point what the future plans are. I'm just hoping that they are going to start having future plans and stop this nonsense of...
don't know what people are expecting. Like we still have the same players. We've only brought in a couple of new players. And not a huge amount of anything else in the transfer window. So
I think what I'd say, though, is it's almost like we've gone from pillar to post. We've gone from having a rigid philosophy to this is how we do it. Whatever else happens, this is how we're doing it. To now, I can't see any sort of philosophy at all. I think there's got to be a middle ground. The only thing I can see is that he's going with man-to-man marking. Which is interesting, but let's be honest. I think Mateta absolutely bullied Bednarik, and we were lucky that we got away with that one. I think Delap, I'm not convinced it's necessarily working, but I think there needs to be some sort of plan, and that's what at least you got under Ralph. At least you knew what it was going to be, and the Red Bull style of play. Like, at least you know what it's going to be, and you know what your team's going to offer. I'm not saying it has to be a certain philosophy; you can still adapt it. But I just what do we look like under Juric? Like, what defensively, maybe we know, but attacking wise, I don't I couldn't answer that question.
Does it almost feels Ruben Selassie, doesn't it? Where we had Hassan Hootaball, Nathan Jones tried to change things. It was terrible. We immediately reverted back to a proto Hassan Hootaball, but Sellis didn't really have much of his own sort of way to manage the team. And Juric is basically just trying to throw the kitchen sink at anything that maybe might work and maybe the players can do. But yeah, I guess there's a difference between an identity and a philosophy around the way you can have identity, you can have styles of play, but you instead of being extremely rigid like Martin was. But I want to talk about when we come back some of the post-match comments that I'm pretty sure both of you have heard. And I want to get what your thoughts are. And I can obviously share mine because let's face it, I'm not exactly quiet about my opinions. But that is after a word from our partners at the Global Sports Podcast Network. The Global Sport Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts. And we are back. So after a big old conversation about what has happened, what hasn't happened, what we're worried about when it comes to what being a Southampton player even means anymore. I saw someone tweet out about, do you remember when I think somebody asked the question about the Southampton way and Adam Blackmore didn't get a chance to ask it, the fans forum, and it's kind of not a thing anymore. But part of that, I thought, was that we were a well-together, tight-knit group of players, knowing that some of our eventual talents might leave. What I didn't expect from this season was Flynn Downs, who has only just signed a long-term contract with us, seemingly throwing his toys out the pram a little bit because he didn't get a move to Ipswich. So, gentlemen, let's start with Greg. What's your opinion on it, mate?
Mate, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, I would potentially have some sympathy for it if it were a big move to, like, I don't know, like an Arsenal or a Liverpool or something. But Ipswich, like, they're gonna likely be down with us again next season. It just seems ridiculous, and I think that it just blows my mind. I know there's no loyalty in football these days, but he literally signed 6 months ago.
I don't know that maybe he just wants to go and it's not necessarily Ipswich. Like, I don't think anyone said that he definitely wanted to go to Ipswich, because you're right. What would be the point? How does that benefit his career? I mean, he wanted to prove that he could play in the Premier League this year, right? I think he said that in the past. He hasn't proved that for one reason or another. So, you take your lumps. You're going to have to go back down to Championship and prove again, because he was our best player in the Championship, in my opinion. And vital to what we do. Didn't work in the Premier League. Okay, maybe he's really close with Russell Martin, and that's what's rumoured, in which case fair enough, but unfortunately that's football. So I don't know that it can't be because he wants to go back to Ipswich. It must just be that he doesn't like the manager, or he doesn't get on with the manager and wants a move. I just can't see a world in which he's desperate to force it to Ipswich, personally, because I really don't see how he benefits. And I'm sure there was some needle towards the end of the season with them anyway. I think they booed him, am I right in thinking, at the end of the season? So, I know that doesn't necessarily mean a huge amount, but yeah, I just think if you're a football player in general, and I work with a lot of young players and players that have played at a good level, I think it's just a general thing. You just do things the right way. And if you don't do things the right way, eventually you'll get caught. And, you're seeing that. But unfortunately, it just seems to be that we're seeing that everywhere in football. And Marcus Rashford being a prime example.
Crazy.
Yeah. I think it's just a modern way.
I did see someone on Facebook also say, although this is the bloke that thought eating raw chicken livers was a good idea, so maybe we shouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah, I'm with you, Oscar. I don't think it's because he specifically wanted to go to Ipswich. I don't think it's specifically. I think he wants to leave. I think that he's fallen out with Russ. My problem with a lot of this is that when he was taking loan deals, when he was at West Ham, and he was taking a loan deal every other year, if it didn't work out, he could get recalled and then go to a different club, right? And I think that seems to be the philosophy that he's got in the back of his mind, is like, well, I've I don't think he understands he signed a long-term contract with us, which means rain or shine. It doesn't just mean now we've had a bad season, you get to go, and you don't like the manager anymore, so you get to go. Is it because he wanted to stay at West Ham and Russell Martin is the thing that convinced him, and he just was convinced that they would play so great that they would do exactly what they did last season and somehow stay up this season? Maybe. Stranger things have happened. Greg predicted us 12th. Like, that he might have genuinely deluded himself into thinking, and maybe he's annoyed, looking frustrated because it hasn't worked out. You can see the two most frustrated players out on that pitch most of the time are him and Taylor Harwood-Bellis, and that says a lot about the sort of youth of them, their age, the sort of world of football they're coming up in. And people were criticising Bednarek yesterday for going and having a chat with Redmond after the game had finished. I'm like, well, he turned down a massive move because he's quite settled in Southampton, quite likes it, quite happy to play, fights for the club. And he also had his diva moment where he went to Villa, and look how it worked out for him. He came back. Whereas now you've got...
Yeah, I think if you flip it, like, look at Fernandes. Like, look at the difference in the two. He's probably, I mean, would you agree he's probably been our best player this season?
I would agree. He's the one I don't
certainly top
people
three.
To notice.
No, but
maybe between him and Walker Peters.
Yeah, but does he have a sulk on the pitch? No. He puts in 100% every game? You don't hear any noise from him. He must know that his future's elsewhere. But what Downs has got to remember is that other clubs see this, and is he exactly going to be on the top of anyone's wish list at the moment? Like, again, if he's having an unbelievable season, like Fernandes, and he's had a good season, and this is the situation, and Southampton turned around and said, no, you can't leave, then fair enough. But unfortunately, he's struggling to get in the team. So realistically, who is going to be looking at him? Someone said to me about, or I saw on Twitter, I think it was, or X, about, maybe we should go to West Ham and see if we can do a swap deal for Ward-Prowse. I was like, well, obviously, some very educated opinions on X. A, Ward-Prowse obviously wouldn't want to go to the Championship, but B, in what world does Flynn Downs get anywhere near the West Ham team if Ward-Prowse can't? That they've already decided that he can't make it in there. So
I really want us to stop that obsession with our ex-players. It's so frustrating. We may as well just bring back Redmond. Just bring back the whole gang. Bring back Wanyama. He's probably still around somewhere. Like, why don't we just bring back everyone? Romeu. Like, I love Yoshida. I'm not going to bring him back. Like, the MLS is his level now. Like, that's where I'm at. But yeah, I think my opinion, and the opinion that I tweeted out that annoys me the most about these players throwing up a fuss and trying to get a move and being annoyed that they don't get a move, is that if they got a move in January, like Ben Brereton Diaz and much like Adam Armstrong, and we end up being the worst team in Premier League history, they were always going to be known as part of the worst team in Premier League history. That will be an accolade that is talked about as a, like when you say, oh, well, they were part of the Leicester's, championship winning team or Premier League winning team. They are going to be part of Southampton's, like, worst ever Premier League team of all time. If they had put in the fight, stayed, actually worked hard, and we end up by some miracle staying up, we could have not had that accolade. That accolade stays with them regardless of if they move and run away from the situation or not. And that's kind of what annoys me, because they're the ones that had the opportunity to change it. It's just baffling to me. And I understand you can call it the manager, but when you've got players being paid thousands of pounds, throwing a hissy fit because they aren't putting in the effort that their boss expects from them. And then, it getting out into the public about it because of the fact that our new manager, in the nicest possible way, I don't think he really cares about their feelings as much as Martin does. And that partly is a good thing, right? Like, you have to have a balance of those things in management, not just football management, just like managing people in general. It's difficult. It's hard. I've been a manager, hate it. I can barely control my own emotions, let alone other people's. But if you're going to do stuff like that with somebody who's as blunt and as honest as Juric, she's be like, yeah, Flynn's not in the team because he's, it's been bad and he's now throwing up a fuss about it. And you're like, it's just.
Yeah, I think it's just modern footballers. I think they they don't want criticism. I'm not saying Downs in general, but generally modern footballers, they can't take criticism. And this is the way they're at. Okay, well, if it's not my fault, it's everyone else's. Let's deflect it, and then we get a move, and then we start again. I think it's gone are the days where they just knuckle down and get on with it. Which is, I'm interested as to what happened with Adam Armstrong, because I can't see him being one that would have thrown toys out the pram.
No.
Not as
He
much. I
doesn't
feel
seem
like
like
he had
that.
an opportunity to play every game because of a
Yeah.
loan deal and probably went, yeah, I'll take it. And he
I
liked the
actually think
previously.
Juric came out and said that he was a professional right until the minute he
Yeah.
got the move. So, and the fact that he would come out and say that and then a week later throw Flynn under the bus really says to me everything you need to know about the difference in attitude.
But also, Armstrong's gone to play under a manager that he's known previously, a manager that trusts him, a manager that went in for him pretty quickly, and he was paid him back already. He scored the other day.
Yeah.
They won 2-1. So says it says a lot, and maybe that is the case with some of the other managers. And we've discussed the state of the transfers, we've discussed the state of the club, and how I think that if they learn from the mistakes, I personally think that it's not the end of the world, that we're owned by people that seem to not really have a clue. They're doing something about it. We need to allow time for that to happen and kick into gear. Probably not going to be this season unless something dramatic happens over the next 16 games. But I think from my perspective, the upsetting thing about this game is more the information that's come out after it that just goes fantastic. You've got every single Saints fan screaming his name, thinking he was joking when he was putting up the iron sign in front of us and then signed for us long term. And now 6 months later, he's trying to get out of Dodge. And it's like, I know there's no loyalty in football, but like, it's so hard to, how can you have kids who have favourite players anymore? Like how many favourite players, Greg, whereas your daughter had going through who've left consistently? Like,
I mean, her first favourite was Tino Livramento, so it's a considerably sore subject.
But maybe that is a symptom of the modern game, and it's frustrating. But like, I'm kind of where I'm at is I would rather have a bunch of players that actually want to play for the team, and if a big move comes in the future, then happy days. Fernandez, I don't, if he moves in the summer, you won't hear a peep from me. I'll be, wish him well. I'll be sad that he's gone. Even Kyle Walker-Peters, a lot of people are cross about him, but he's never made any noise. He's never not played. He's never not trained. He's never thrown up a fuss about it.
And that's why I don't understand players that do it, because let your football do the talking, and it seems to earn them. Just everything is so much more positive with it. What's the feeling on Ricky Lambert these days, compared to some of the others that left at the same time? Luke Shaw, again, I don't recall him making much noise. He still comes back. Redmond got a good ovation, and he wasn't even particularly good for us. Like, but these ones that force it or kick up a fuss, they're the ones that, people don't, and I'm sure they don't really care. I
had a back and forth with somebody on Blue Sky. I'm still mad about Virgil van Dijk, great player. Still mad about his little tweet, Instagram picture of him sat on a private jet looking out the window, looking all sad. And it's just like, great, well, and then he might be conducting himself significantly better now because he's had his moment, right? Same with Bednarak. Like, some of them have these moments and go on and mature from it. I hope it's a learning experience. I hope the reaction out of it is to do so well in training that he gets back in and he takes Ugochukwu's place and he plays amazing for us. And that's what the result is. My worry is that isn't going to be what the result is. And the other problem now is that on what could have been a morale building win on top of a win, back-to-back wins, doesn't matter if it's cup or league, whatever, something positive to build on has resulted in something that was awful, both to watch, both to talk about. And then off the back of that, you then get questions about personnel. And then we're finding out that half the players have tried to leave, either left or now are just not, or complaining about not being able to leave. And you're like,
reality complaining because no one wanted them.
And this is, and that's the thing. And it's like, we've still got 16 games. Maybe it's not all bleak. Maybe it's not all doom and gloom. Maybe we'll get a few wins here and there. We don't have to worry about other competitions. Maybe Juric will find an 11 that he likes. He'll find a formation that he likes. He'll stick to it. Maybe we'll start to see an identity again. Maybe he goes at the end of the season, we pick a completely different manager and we start to develop something else. As long as we progress and survive as a football club and have something to, I guess, look forward to, like, I will be, I guess, content. I'm not going to say happy yet because it's been a while since I felt hugely happy other than last weekend. We're not going to finish 12th, Greg. I'm really sorry. We're also not going to win the FA Cup this year. I'm really sorry to tell you. We're also not going to win the league, but we might not still get relegated. He says, lying to himself and everyone
We
listening.
might not finish 20th. That's the aim, right? We might finish 19th.
Yeah, well, we don't know. City's charges supposedly come out over the next few weeks. So when they're deducted like 90 points,
yeah,
we'll sit 19th.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really sorry that it's not been the happiest of episodes. It's gone significantly over than we expected it to, but we had a lot to talk about, and I think it's there's a lot of things that we all deeply care about the club, and it's frustrating to watch these things happen, in front of our eyes and not have a way to talk about it, but we do, because that's why we do this podcast. So with that, everyone, we will be joining you for next week, where we'll joining you tomorrow, where we'll try and, I guess, tactically break down this game. Maybe
it might be nicer to try and think about what tactics we could employ at the weekend to
there you go. Whatever we fancy doing. If we don't want to talk about this game, let's talk about the ideal tactics we would use on the weekend. But either way, we'll be back tomorrow with more Southampton talk. Thank you very much for listening. We're available on all the social media, so Facebook, Twitter /X. We are on the official GSPN YouTube channel. If you fancy watching us in person, there's a playlist there called The Daily Southampton. All of our podcasts get posted to that playlist. We are also on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, anywhere else. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a rating, all those wonderful things. Thank you very much for joining us for this bumper match review, and we will see you in the next one.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.